young man all decked out in white clothes.
You know, giving him a fashion tip, I think. So it's the same.
You know, I like the shirt, but it doesn't have a pocket.
I like dress code.
It is. You're a nerd, you gotta have a place for an ink pen,
For an instructor, especially.
an ink pen, a pocket protector.
Yep, but if CPA talking right there. Appreciate that. Right, about five years.
Yeah.
And we could probably get a.
That's good.
No, it really wouldn't. I was looking at that. There's probably about 6 feet of concrete. That's all you need. Because you got the two driveways.
Our church operating.
I mean, it's very expensive, like.
So I think they can do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good deal just to keep people around a little bit better.
I think.
And so somebody doesn't twist his ankle or something on your ass. Then we have lawsuits and stuff.
I'm with you.
Well, it does.
No, a little bit of preventive maintenance can go a long way in that situation. But I mean, especially if you're gonna have a restaurant. You wanna have it accessible with sidewalks. Especially being that close to the bike path.
John, what are they doing over there, digging that in the shell wall property? What are they running over there?
Where's that?
Well,
went to you.
South of town?
yeah, they got.
Southwest, yeah.
Pipes about that big.
20 years of it.
There looks like.
Are they running gas?
I think they're gonna have to move some of that gas line a certain degree to get, they're putting turn lanes in by that gas station.
Yeah.
That gas station. So I think they're having to move some lines.
I mean, these lines are this big around.
Yeah, and then they're putting new sewer in there.
I think that's promising.
And then they're also. Arion's there moving big internet cable too. They're gonna put a drop in there. They're gonna have to splice their cable there because of roads. So they're gonna cut it out.
Go. Yeah, we're 5 years into ours, yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty certain, that's what I like about it. You can't kill those things. They're really robust.
Right. Small section on events, that field behind it, there's so much weed pressure, they don't blow it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I could get some canes as a buffer, that'll be nice.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're priming canes, so I'll be able to cut them down.
Yeah.
Shooter.
I could go plant some creeping Charlie back there, but that would buffer it for you.
I used to have that in the old house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like your mountains.
The neighbors.
No, things are little, you guys wanna wander down.
Yeah, I just have to get it done.
Yeah, I know.
It's,
You know, bring the kid and we can do a prayer walk. I mean, firework, rattlesnake, but actually shit, everything is like chopping. And the places that were burned, it's just.
Hey, Jay.
I mean, it's just these clusters of native plants. Yeah.
I put up with her.
Hey, this is my dad. This is Corey. He's also here with.
But we do.
We're all that.
What's wrong with people? I've tried for 50 years and think I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, do you know where it says riding plated?
I have to ask, I thought I heard, I didn't, I traded farmer for it.
Oh, nice.
So I worked with farmers, so, the guy had stuff that was growing out of where it was supposed to be and into the pathways. He said, well, if you want to help me with this, and then come back and. Out.
You want to know something? You don't have to help me with the thing. I've been giving them to my neighbors for 20 years. So you do it. And it's something like you can decide to join on Facebook. I mean, everything is just, don't ever be like that. Yeah, me, I was like.
Because eventually we don't want to do that else. That's scary. Yeah. That was great. It's just scary. I agree. I have to talk to people want to figure out if it's.
Well, yeah, I see it steady, myself.
With really mainly farm work.
Maybe can't read. Maybe the library can help me.
Yeah, it's okay if they don't have more
Right, for at least before I.
And
Of course.
then-
It's been the last couple of years. The first year.
I do understand.
Good phone call today?
For a couple years, so.
Yeah, I did.
I don't know. what-
Okay.
For crop
Yeah.
rotation.
Yeah.
So the back room from Waste. Every quarter, I think, have-
Yeah, and I thought it was for them.
Yeah.
He. Pastor.
It needs some heat though out there, they get this water heat up out there.
That's contracted.
It's cold down.
It's good. So there's groups like they don't contact me. And I do appreciate.
I went driving Saturday, it's still like 56 degrees. I like at least getting to 60.
Thank you. So that was a thing. No, I have. Original.
You know, I have a hard time talking because I'm fat, so I'm always warm. Yeah, you got 3 strikes against you. You're good.
Entire length of fence, so. 60 feet, we're putting wire.
Wow. What's that?
Yeah, out there. So in the right. Could be something.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, we don't see much of this one. If we do the. We have. We got. You had, it's like it's sassy song, so. Grassy. It's all soft, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't.
No, already.
Yeah, well,
That is.
I've given them all the years along there.
You can just.
To the north.
Hang on a second.
That was special, like the whole bunch of grass. Bottles, or something, that kind of stuff instead of houses.
I saw it on search down here. I said traditional that. That's where I was.
Yeah.
That they just spot it out.
Yeah.
Like, I really like that. They both manage it, I'm not excited.
Yeah.
But so for now, and this is. I could say, He's the person likes to. It's John.
Well, I think
So, you know, with that aspect, I think. There's always some. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
What time is it like? You gave that, you know. Got sidewalks all one Thursday here, except for 6 to 9 minutes.
Is there such a thing?
I just don't see something.
I gotta go. Get down right
Yeah, all right. Well,
But you get it, you check the ground, you can go, and you get right. I try to stay on Then I looked at it, there's. It makes you go. Speak up. I don't get a lot of. Okay. I'm good. I look at Yeah. So I think those can be. So then that's not true. Yeah. And that's the. Yeah, just to look at She wrote that since she was in the road.
Good evening. The time is 6 p.m. and I will call to order the Huxley City Council meeting. Roll call, please.
Murphy,
Here.
Mulder,
Here.
Rigler,
Here.
Etcher,
Here.
Roberts. Let the record show that Roberts is absent.
Thank you very much. And we are streaming live on YouTube as well. So, need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll give you a motion, Mulder.
I'll offer a second. I have a motion by Mr. Mulder, a second by Mr. Rigler. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries. Now is the time in the agenda for public comment. Anybody wishing to make any public comments this evening are certainly welcome to. Just ask that you come to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Good evening, sir.
Oh. Can you hear me? Oh, good. Working first time. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Yeah, my name is Jeff Herron. I live at 1000 Ballard Drive with my wife Colleen, who's also present here tonight. We're here because back on February 11th, we held a working session with the council on a couple topics related to our property at 1000 Ballard Drive, one of which was unauthorized public access to a shortcut through the back of our property that connects a couple pieces of land in Huxley. And the other was a council decision to pass on an easement right to a neighbor where it was in question on whether that neighbor had the right for such an easement. That was about 4 months ago. The outcome of that session, as you might remember, for those that were there that evening, was in fact to start a search for the city to identify the documentation that might justify the easement transferal. And so we're here now 4 months later, in part because now we're in the summer. And that access back there is really magnified in terms of usage. We get scooters, we get a lot of golf carts, we get children wanting to walk back there and use the pond, which scares the heck out of us as homeowners. So we would really like to wrap this up with the city, but we're waiting for this action item from 4 months ago. So I'm here just to request, please, a feedback and also offer, if it means we need to do a second working session to kind of get to the bottom of this and put it to bed, please ask for it because we're ready to do that.
Fair enough, sir. Thank you very much for your comments this evening. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak this evening? Seeing no one rise. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Mr. Etcher.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mulder. Any comments or discussion on the consent agenda? Roll call, please.
Etcher,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Mulder,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Okay, moving along. We've got a presentation regarding the Heart of Iowa Nature Trail Celebration August 9th event. Crystal Davis.
Good evening, Council. I'm Crystal Davis with Story County. I am the Story County Outreach and Special Projects Manager. And I'm also here with Patrick Sheehan with Story County Conservation. And we're here to talk to you about a special event that we're going to do in partnership with Conservation, celebrating the Heart of Iowa Nature Trail for an event on August 9th. And I'll let Patrick give a little bit of background while I hand out some flyers.
Yeah, just kind of want to give everyone a brief history about this. I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of it. I believe the city of Huxley paved the section from Highway 69 going out to Trail Ridge Park, I believe in 2017. That was pretty much the first pavement that hit the ground here on the Heart of Iowa Nature Trail, besides minor places here and there. Since then, we began in 2019. I started here in 2017. One of the first things we did is become a master plan for involving all 5 communities along the Heart of Iowa Nature Trail. Huxley was obviously one of them. I believe I wrote my first grant before we even had the final master plan. We did get that grant. Kind of got momentum. Paving started in 2019 from Slater to 535th Street. I got 2 more grants in 2020. We paid from Trail Ridge Park all the way to the Skunk River Bridge. There was some downtime between 2020 and 2024, but in the meantime, we secured 5 grants and some of the ARPA funds out there. And we last summer paid the remaining from the Skunk River Bridge all the way to the Highway 69 in Collins. So we are completely paved across the main part of the county, 21.21 miles, connecting all 5 of the cities. This is a long project. I know everyone been kind of working on it since the 1990s. Really trying to work towards that. We really gained momentum starting about 2018. I believe, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it was like $7.5 million for all that. And granted, most of that did come from mostly grants, and I'm still working the numbers, but we're definitely under 5% of that. I'm thinking about 2.5% actually came out of any type of tax base from the Story County. So that's a pretty good return for a small piece of that. So that's kind of the history of it. And we're kind of getting excited because now we get to hopefully celebrate all the work that we had done in the last couple of years.
Yep. So what we're here today is we wanted to announce that we're having this celebration on August 9th, and we're partnering with the Iowa Bicycle Coalition to host a bike ride that'll start over in Slater. and then end in Collins. And at Collins, we'll have a special ribbon cutting to commemorate that we've paved all the way across the southern border of our county. And so we wanted to say that we'll start in Slater with a rolling start. That means between 8 and 9 is when we would encourage bicyclists to begin their ride. A best estimation on arrival time into Huxley would be 9 a.m. And then as you can see on the event flyer, how we get all the way to Collins. This is a group that they anticipate does not have vehicles that follow to the end town and then give the riders a ride back. They do bicycle back along the trail. So they'll be going both directions on this day. And we're really excited about this. So we are just here to say we want to do this, and we'd like to encourage and see if Huxley would be interested in partaking with anything that you're interested in doing, actually. When the folks get to Huxley, are there ways that we can direct them to businesses? Would anyone like to have some nice music at the trailhead? Someone's offering coffee or some snacks or something like that. Or is there a way, something historical or something you want to try to draw attention to about the community of Huxley, that they would maybe take a rest break, use the restroom, and then maybe go sightseeing for a little bit in Huxley? So again, in partnership with Iowa Bicycle Coalition, we do have registration. The ride is free. They do encourage registration so they kind of can anticipate who's going to be along. And then we will be coming back to you to say, hey, what do you want to promote? Is there anything going on special in the town that we can put on the coalition's registration page, the county and the conservation through our separate social media and website pages will be saying, here's a list of activities, here's what's happening in Huxley, among other things. And so we just want to say we're excited to do this, and then invite you to participate as a community, more than just letting the bike riders ride by on the trail. How can we get them with your blessing and encouragement, and to see your businesses and what you have to offer?
Yeah, and we kind of view this as a way for you guys to kind of show off what you have in this town. We bring the bikes in. You get, Huxley's done a good job. They, the railroad park down there, they've got water, they have bathrooms. Some other towns are lacking that. I know Cambridge is working towards that. Been kind of helping them out. I always tell people, if we get the bikers to put your foot on the ground to fill up water or go to the bathroom, that's where you get your signage, take them up there, have them go to the places we have. I know the Pockets and the Francis and General Insurance, they've been really good to me. Every time I write a grant, they're putting a letter of support in. I've really leaned on Huxley through this past, mostly because it was so difficult to get it to here and through this town. Then we got a little, I shouldn't say easier, but more funding when we got farther on. So, but no, I'm excited to get this going. So I know the city is already experiencing the good things happening from the trail.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that presentation. I appreciate you highlighting Huxley as part of that. I think Huxley should absolutely find a way to participate in that. Quantities of people, certainly you don't have a great feel for that. Is it 50 or 500? Do you have a feel?
Yeah, so we're relying on the Iowa Bicycle Coalition because their experience with hosting rides, they're saying could be anywhere between 200 and 300 that would, some will be registered, some will just join and ride. And so that's their anticipation, between 200 and 300 would be coming through. Yep.
Okay, great. Please.
Yeah. I tried pressing on the link that's here and it didn't take me there. Is there a
Yeah.
website that goes with that
Yes,
to
so
promote?
is it okay? I work a lot with David. Can I send him the
Yeah,
link?
that'd be perfect.
And
Thank you.
then also we are planning to gather the cities together on a Zoom after we present and say, what other questions do you have? And we'll start with our contacts like a David in the other communities, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
And then also at the ribbon cutting ceremony, that'll be at 12:30 in Collins, will be conservation will be issuing an invite to the mayors of all the communities. And if you're available to come get a little photo op with us and celebrate over there as well. But yes, we can get that to to David and.
Yeah, I just
Is
didn't
that
know.
okay?
I noticed it wasn't on the poster, and if we were to post the poster somewhere or something.
Yeah.
people may
He's
not
working on
get
the final.
together. So if
Absolutely.
this is just a draft, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Colin.
Yep.
Perfect. Yep, thank you very much. I would certainly encourage council, as you've got ideas or thoughts as to how to make this a bigger event for Huxley, please pass those along. I'm sure staff will have some great ideas as well. So look forward to that. Moving on. Need a motion to approve resolution 25056, setting a public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the Huxley Code, Municipal Code, Chapter 165, to allow a rezoning of a property at the east end of Skyview Boulevard, north end of Blue Sky Boulevard from M1 to R1. Motion.
We'll make a motion.
Motion, Mr. Etcher.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mulder. We're just setting the public hearing at this point, so any further questions or conversation? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Etcher,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Mulder,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Very much. Moving along, we have the first reading of ordinance number 545. It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances for the City of Huxley by amending Chapter 41, which is the Public Health and Safety relating to fireworks. Again, this is the first reading that we're undertaking right now. Need a motion on this?
I'll give you a motion.
Motion, Mr. Mulder.
Second.
Second, Mr. Etcher. Any questions, comments? This was a work session item 2 weeks ago. Hearing none, I'd ask for roll call, please.
Mulder,
Yes.
Rigler,
Yes.
Etcher,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Okay, we do have the opportunity to waive the second and third readings as we'll take a 4/5 vote. Ms. Roberts is absent this evening, so is there a motion to waive the second and third readings?
I'll make a motion.
Motion, Mr. Etcher,
Mulder, I'll second.
second, Mr. Mulder. Discussion, roll call. I'm sorry.
Just because it was polarizing, I know it's time sensitive, guys, and that's part of why we decided what we did. I would like the public to be able to hear it one more time, just in case there's anyone who provided feedback. There's been a lot of engagement with it, so not trying to stifle it. I know we need something by July 4th, or I can't remember the exact dates. We have a few days before that. Yeah, so it's gonna be like the meeting before it, but at least give people an opportunity to hear it again.
Fair enough. We will have a meeting on June 24th. So any further comments? Okay, this is a motion to waive the second and third reading. Again, this would take 4/5. If not, the second and third would come back in 2 weeks. So roll call, please.
Etcher,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Mulder,
Yes.
Rigler,
I'm gonna do no on this one, guys.
Okay, fair enough. Again, the second and third readings will be heard in 2 weeks. Moving along, item D this evening is a presentation and discussion regarding the water and sewer rates. Mr. Schultz.
Good evening, folks. Chip Schultz with Northland. I'll go ahead and start on sewer. That's all that with everyone. So kind of in the interest of sewer having the pending project coming up down the road, I'll go ahead and get into that. So the bound handout is equivalent to what was emailed at the end of last week and was in your packets. Going to the page numbers are at the bottom right of each page. On page 2 of 20, there are just a few background items that are laid out for review. I won't go through them verbatim, but it's just an overview of the existing debt, the history of the user rate charges, and then what's been adopted traditionally in the past. I think the city has taken off 5-year approach to user rates for both water and sewer, adopting user rates kind of in 5-year segments, bit by bit. And we're up at this point in time with the adopted sewer rates, and I believe also with water. So I've got the details to support that here. One item that's not laid out here, one of the bills in the state legislature this year had proposed for sewer and garbage rates to cap those at a 2% increase each year. That did not get approved, but I know that's alarmed a lot of cities and utilities to try to take a multi-year approach to user rates, just because it really takes away fundamentally your local control on how to run your utilities. So a lot of folks are saying, we're going to take a 5-year look and adopt rates for a 5-year going forward period. Some are even saying 7 years. The city of Roland recently adopted a 7-year sewer rate adjustment approach. That's entirely up to the council how you want to approach that. 5 years is consistent with what the city of Huxley's done in the past, and that's just laid out for reference. So 3 scenarios are included in the handout. They're behind the 3 respective numbered tabs. Still on page 2 of 20, scenario A reflects larger rate adjustments of the 3. The purpose and the kind of the philosophy in the background is to lead toward, I know the council's had some preferences on building some cash for some projects, particularly that came up in the discussion of the water plant project. Scenario A takes the approach of positioning the city best with that approach over a 4-year period, looking at fiscal year 29-30. Scenario A user rates generate about $1,150,000 of sewer fund cash to apply toward the future wastewater upgrade plant project. The timing, of course, I think is still up in the air on that, but this reflects 9% user rate adjustments, uniform across the board in 2025, 26, and 27, with 5% adjustments in 2028 and 29. All of the user rate adjustments are proposed to be effective on July 1st, except this year is assumed to be August 1st. And so that's kind of the outlay on that. The scenario B takes the approach of 6.5% rate adjustments in 25, 26, and 2027, and 4.5% rate adjustments in 28 and 29. And then scenario C assumes 5% adjustments for 3 years, 25, 26, and 2027, with 4% adjustments in 2028 and 2029. Scenario B generates about $850,000 of sewer fund cash in fiscal year 29-30 to buy down any financing for the wastewater upgrade project. Scenario C generates about $620,000 of sewer fund cash. The next page, page 3 of 20 on the sewer document, this lays out what the historic city sewer utility rates have been. The base sewer charge has been $25 for all accounts or all customers since July 1 of 2019. So right about a 6-year period. The per 1,000 gallons or the flow charge listed in row 2 has been updated about 3% per year each year going back to 2019, with the most recent rate adjustment in the column to the right for the July 1 of 2024 time period, reflecting again a 3% adjustment. I know in reference to the water plant, the council was pretty adamant to try to keep the minimum fee or the base fee lower, put more of the charge on the per 1,000 gallons. So that's, you can see that's consistent history here with the sewer historic rates as well. On page 4 of 20, this lays out a little bit of history on the city's sewer debt, including the most recent wastewater plant project improvement in 2009. And page 4 of 20, the city called in $330,000 of principal in the blue shaded area of the 2013 sewer revenue refunding, totaling $330,000. And then the aggregate sewer debt on page 5 of 20, it's important to note in column S on page 5 of 20, with that redemption of the 2013 debt, the sewer revenue debt has been lower in the $35,000 to $40,000 range in the past several fiscal years, including fiscal year 25. That's going to bump up to about $103,000, up to $112,000 and $115,000 going forward. This is just existing debt only. getting into the scenarios behind tab 1. This is scenario A, the larger rate adjustments. So kind of the order of the cash flow, it lays out historic, the row numbers that are along the left side of each page lays out historic sewer gallons billed, the sewer rate charges in terms of the change versus the prior rates, and then the actual sewer rates charged are in row 7 and 8. Kind of a repeat of what was on the prior page. Number of meters or accounts are shown in row 11. The average bill impacts are in the areas of rows 13, 14, and 15 and 16. Again, kind of in the order of the cash flow, it lays out operating revenues first. For the most recent completed fiscal year 23-24, the sewer fund had just over $1 million in annual revenue at $1,012,000. And we're projecting that to, with these rate adjustments and number of accounts being adjusted that are assumed above, the gross revenues of the sewer fund going forward are listed out then in row 2028. Any comments or questions on the kind of the order of the cash flow on this page? What's laid out on page 8 of 20 then are, this begins to dig into the operating expenses. And so it uses the detail from the city's accounting software, breaking out the operating expenses by salaries, wages, staff development, repairs, maintenance, and commodities on the first page. Then flipping to the next page on page 9 of 20, breaks out contractual services, then treatment, chemicals, and after that, then total operating expenses are broken out in row 93, and then net operating income of the sewer fund only is in row 94. You can see how that operating income has deteriorated as the city's operating expenses have bumped up, and considering the increase in the sewer debt, that'll bump up to just over 100,000 going forward, beginning in fiscal year 26. That operating income number in row 94 begins to kind of point out the necessity for the rate adjustments. Just kind of a historic anecdote. It's not on the pages, but if you look back to fiscal year 2019, the sewer fund had 520,000 of operating expenses. For fiscal year 24, you were at just over 700,000. So that's a change over that 5-year period of about 35%, or about averaging about 7% per year. Then contrast that with the 3% per 1,000 gallon, the rate charge. That's where you see that deterioration in the net operating income. The final page on the kind of the detailed cash flow pages on page 10 of 20, this breaks out the net revenues for debt in the gray shaded row 102, the sewer debt service. This includes nothing yet for the future plant improvements. That's broken out in the area of row 103. What's assumed then for the kind of planning ahead, trying to position the city to apply some cash toward the future wastewater plant project. There's a set aside listed in row 121 to beginning in fiscal year 25-26 to start to set aside cash each year in a dedicated fund ranging from 125,000 to 275,000 in fiscal year 29-30. And then this just assumes in that point in time in fiscal year 29-30, that's where you have in row 127, excuse me, about $1,150,000 to buy down the sewer future sewer plant project. A key item to note too are the capital outlays and the transfers in row 119. You can see what those have been historically, ranging from 42,000 for the current year to 218,000 for fiscal year 21-22. And then the transfers are noted in row 122. So that's kind of the order of the cash flow and how it breaks out the approach to user rates. Any questions or concerns on this scenario? Okay, I'll go into, I'll keep going in because there's a lot to go through and want to be respectful of folks' time here. So scenario B, I'm just going to page 12 of 20. Scenario B lays out the assumed rate adjustments in rows 4 and 5, 6.5% for the current year, as well as 2026 and 2027. And then 4.5% is assumed for fiscal year 28-29, effective July 1 of 28 and July 1 of 2029. Operating revenues are shown below that, similar to the prior cash flow. Same assumptions on sewer operating expenses. And I'm not sure, so I should be sure to note the individual categories for sewer operating expenses, as you can see kind of along the left side of page 13 of 20. The individual categories are assumed to grow at 3.5% per year, year over year. If you look at the top of each subcategory, you can see what the rate adjustments the expense adjustments have been historically. For example, if you look at repairs, maintenance, and commodities in row 51, of negative 4% drop comparing FY 23 to FY 22, a 30% increase comparing FY 24 to FY 23. And then for the current budget, and I think the city is traditionally pretty conservative or high with the budget assumptions, a 29% expense adjustment for FY 25 versus FY 24. Your staff might, if you have some input on what those expense adjustments should be, these can be individually tailored and tweaked per each expense category as you work through the cash flow.
Yeah, I can make any comment if necessary, so.
I mean, I guess I won't go through every line either, but I mean, as a whole, the plant's at capacity. I put that in my monthly report pretty much every month. As a whole, gallons wise, we're doing okay. It's just the strength of waste that's coming in. Plus with the new water plant being online, we've gained some water use there. So, as a whole, I'd love to not see a 3.5% increase on every budget line, but we've got, chemical expenses are just getting more and more expensive. Like simple things, like I just ordered some probes. Those same probes I ordered 3 years ago, $800. Today, $1,700. So, I mean, it's just really simple things like that when you have 12 probes and you're spending $1,700 a piece, it adds up really fast. So we try to be as frugal as we can. But I mean, between that and then obviously electrical usage, since the plant's running as efficiently as we can, I mean, we're doing pretty dang well, but we just, you're using more electricity to make sure that you're meeting those limits. So with the plant running at this high capacity, you've got higher electrical expenses, chemicals expenses, and then everything, especially with the age of the plant, it's only going on roughly 15 years old since actual online date. But with our growth, it's just faster than we can keep up with. So we're looking at some things to hopefully kind of dial that back. There's some things we're looking at as far as gallons coming in, but that's not going to help our strength. So as a whole, I'd like to see us do a capacity study, hopefully get something out for an RFP this fall, but I didn't want to overwhelm myself too quickly by other projects, plus with all the construction, wastewater plant, things like that. So as a whole, 3.5%, I don't foresee that on every line, but we've also got Barb moved some things around. So we're actually making interest on the money that's in our accounts, which is great, but we're also spending, I think I allocated roughly, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head for insurance, and I'm considerably over on that line. So There's just things that weren't historically taking out of the right lines that are probably skewing these numbers a little bit. So that would probably give some insight as to why the bigger percentages of increases across some of these lines.
We also took the auto and truck operating expense and split that for fiscal year 26 so that fuel, which used to come out of there, is now a separate line item. So that's why that one seems to have a huge decrease for fiscal year 26. So again, it's just trying to get a more accurate representation of where those operating costs are going.
Yep, just trying to make it so that it's easier for everybody to follow. Instead of everything being lumped out of one thing, you actually see what expenses are going for specifically what. So some of the numbers have been goofy here the last year, trying to do as good as I can, keeping track of it, but I try to think I keep a pretty close eye on our budget, but yeah, hopefully that gives some insight. But yeah, as far as the plant expansion, it's coming, but we gotta get there. So I guess if you have any other questions.
No, appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So what scenario B does on page 15 of 20, if you would please, on row 121, you can note the transfers there. Set it aside and assume dedicated amount for the future plant project. That ends up over the 5-year period shown ending in fiscal year 29-30. In row 127, about 850,000 for that set aside. Then scenario C is the most moderate or smallest of the rate adjustments. Tracking with page 17 of 20, this approach assumes a 3-year user rate adjustment of 5% per year in 2025, 2026, and 2027, and then followed by 4% is assumed in 2028 and 2029. Resulting impact on revenues is shown below. Operating expenses are assumed to be the same as with the prior two scenarios. Skipping to page 20 of 20, the very final page. This scenario generates or develops about 620,000 of sewer fund cash in fiscal year 29-30 toward a future plant project. Something to note, and it's you can look at, if you look at row 116, the debt service coverage ratio, these user rates get the city, it's unclear obviously what the future plant's going to cost. So this user rate approach, even this with more moderate rate adjustments in scenario C, gets the city a long way toward supporting the future plant project. So those debt service coverage ratios have to be about 1.1 times to 1.4 times, a little bit, 1.4 is ideal. But you can see you have a debt service coverage ratio about 4.5%. If you pick out just fiscal year 30-31, there's a lot of, again, there's a lot of revenue that's available to pay toward a future plant project, both cash and debt. It's just a question of the timing of that project and what that ultimate cost is. Getting the user rate adjustments in place now not only benefits, the financial position of the sewer fund by generating cash for that project, but also makes the rate adjustments more gradual, known, more broadcasted by the city by taking the approach of implementing them over a multi-year period for folks. So the goal was to not have a big jolt all at once to user rates, even with scenario C, make it more gradual and methodical as we attempted to do on the water project. That one, of course, had more rate adjustments than what are shown here. So historically wise. Any questions on sewer at this point?
Yeah, Chip, is there some methodology or logic to the first 3 years raising more than the last 2 years, or is it? Yeah.
Only just a kind of a time value money type benefit. You could take the approach trying to get the revenues in sooner to generate cash. You could in reality, take the approach, implement the same user rate approach for all 5 years. You could do it for 4 years. There's not a real science to it. It's just trying to get those bigger rate adjustments in a bit sooner to generate the cash.
Any other questions regarding the sewer rate?
I guess my question might just be for Dave or AJ. Are we talking the future stuff 5 years from now? Is that a $10 million project? Is that a $4 million project? I mean, is there a scale? And nobody's gonna really know, but just kind of.
You figure out what our options are, and then hopefully we'll have our numbers by then. But I mean, historically, yeah, you could say 10, you could say 20, I don't know. It all depends on what the solution is, essentially. So
Yeah, if it was,
really, if we can prove that we can treat a higher strength, you know, according to what our current limits are, maybe we could get by with just doing some simpler modifications that gets by for the next 10 years. That'd be the ideal scenario. But we don't know until we have an engineer look at it. So
yeah, I mean, my only feeling is if we know how much in a ballpark we're gonna spend, we're proving 5 years worth of rate adjustments that, you know, we're gonna kind of be locked to for 5 years. And so if we're shooting towards something that we don't know what it is,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I'd rather know ballpark what we're shooting for.
With that, yeah, the main thing is the resolution for the previous 4 or 5 years is up this year. So the main thing is we have to make sure we get something for this upcoming year to implement for some sort of rate increase, because what we have now is not.
Right, so we could do a continuance resolution just to
Yeah.
bump 1 year and
And
then,
then the other
yeah,
part of it too is with this going to the state for possible cap on rate increases. Where do you go with that? So. And I don't know if that bill has died and it's gone forever, or I don't know where that's at.
yeah.
It's dead for now.
It's dead for now.
That's all I would say.
That's the possible hinge, I guess. You know, what we do is if we implement a 5 year now, does it last through that bill, or is it after this year we're down to 2%? I don't know.
So I was thinking like with our growth, the way has been going, I mean, we are the fastest growing in Story County. So with our growth, I mean, we're gonna probably before the 5 years, correct? I mean, I'm thinking the way we're growing now, so that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking a few years out before you have a plan set, and you know, for whatever the perfect option is for a plan upgrade. But I'd love to be able to say that we could do some minor changes. I don't want to overwhelm with terminology, but there's things that we can do throughout the plan, I think. But without an engineer, I can do theoreticals and what we've been able to treat in the past. And I know we can treat a higher strength. I've done it. But what happens when you get a higher strength with a higher flow? And we're headed towards a higher flow.
So what happened,
So-
AJ, also, if we get some industrial that we're looking at, industrial is gonna be more taxing on your waste plant.
We do kind of have our own security net for that. I mean, we've got domestic waste that limits that have to be followed in order to be able to send that waste to us. And if they are exceeded, we've got it in our codes to be able to bill that person for such. So hopefully we're protected, but you never know. I try to keep a really close eye on what business comes to town, but something could sneak through. You never know. So, I mean, we've got these different storage buildings that are going in with sewer and water. What if that person puts something in that storage building that is now going down the drain and we don't catch it? So, yeah, absolutely. There is the possibility of a higher strength waste coming in with industry, and we've got a lot of that going in. So,
And Chip, am I reading this correctly that you projected about a 0.5% growth each year with 11 new meters each year.
That's what's assumed. So you can see historically, that's on row 10 on any of the scenarios. Historically, that's been much more robust growth than that. You had 44 new accounts from 22 to 23, 30 from 23 to 24, and then roughly 7 from 24 to 25 fiscal year. That's a factor why you see, you know, the on rate adjustments, just pick the last year, fiscal year 35 on scenario A, fiscal year 34, 35 on page 7. When you see this is out beyond the 5 years, but a 3.5% rate adjustment factored with the 0.5% roughly of a new customer growth, your revenues still grow about 4.28%. So that's kind of a blend of the rate adjustment plus number of counts.
Any further questions regarding the sewer? Okay, thank you very much. I'll move along to water, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, AJ.
So the separate handout covers the water utility. Just a couple background reference items similar to sewer. The summary is laid out on page 2 of 19. The city, of course, has a couple bond issues that are in place for the water plant project. The 2021 water revenue debt is the only one that's paid from the water fund. The 2022 general obligation debt is paid from tax increment financing revenues. So just a couple notes on that. Historically, for the sewer fund, your operating expenses in fiscal year 2019, year ending June 30, 2019, ended June 30, 2019, were 574,000 approximately. Audited numbers for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2024, most recently completed year, were 755,000, a change of about 180,000 in operating expenses only, 31.4% over that 5-year time period, averaging about 6.3% per year. On the water plant debt, just a reference point as well. What was assumed in one of the more recent rate studies that I completed in 2021, that assumed, this is of course pre-inflation and that occurred in 2022, primarily in 23. Fiscal year 24, in the 2021 rate study, we assumed 716,000 in operating expenses for FY 24. The actuals were 755,000. So that's in large part what's driving the necessity for the more moderate rate adjustments for water compared to sewer. So just kind of wanted to point out that as a reference point. The debt payments for the water revenue debt, there's been on the revenue debt itself from 2021, about 820,000 of that debt's been paid off. And then the 2022 general obligation debt paid by TIF for the water plant project, about 845,000 of that's been paid off already, including the June 1 of 2025 principal payment. So in total, about $1,665,000 of principal has been paid off on the water plant project. Getting back to the handout down on page 3 of 19, this page lays out the historic water utility user rates going back to July 1 of 2019. It breaks out the base charge of the monthly minimum in row 1, the rate per 1,000 gallons in row 2, and then the council's pretty focused at the point in time of 2021 and 22, focusing more of the rate adjustments on the second meter base rate and the second meter per 1,000 gallons rate. So those rate changes are shown historically. Just a reference point on row 1, the base rate or the minimum has been the same since July 1 of 2022 at $19.15. And then the per 1,000 gallons rate adjustments are noted. I'll just look at focusing on the last 4 years. So there was a 18% per 1,000 gallon rate adjustment in column I on page 3, 14% in column K in 2022, 11.3% in 2023, and then it dropped down to 3% at July 1 of 2024. Then you can note the much more heavy focus on the second meter rate adjustments in rows 3 and 4. The following page lays out the is some history, and then the going forward annual debt service payments from on water revenue debt only. This doesn't include the 2022 general obligation debt for the water plant. So the annual debt payments, principal and interest are in the final column to the right. They are pretty level at roughly 456 to 459,000 per year. Pretty stable going forward, with a final payment date of June 1 of 2042. Getting into the scenarios then, behind tab 1, this approach assumes the most significant or larger rate adjustments of any of the 3 scenarios. Similar format or layout to the sewer rate study. Looking at the change in rates in rows 6 and 7, this assumes a 6% rate adjustment in 2025, 5% in 26, 4.5% in 2027, 3.5% in 28, and then of stable or flat 3% rate adjustment going forward. And what the actual user rates are per each rate category, those are broken out in rows 12 and 13, 14 and 15. This approach, similar to sewer, this council, of course, might not want to take this approach, but this assumes a uniform rate adjustments applied to each category of user rate. So it doesn't focus just on the per 1,000 gallons charge or the minimum or the second meter. It's just simply applied uniform, just to try to keep the scenarios more, I guess, digestible for this point in time. If you look at, perhaps maybe pick out row 23, the vertical row is fiscal year 24-25. So a 5,000 gallon customer in row 23, their utility bill in the current year, FY 24-25, is roughly $58. And you can just track that same row going forward to the right. That would adjust to about $61.50 next fiscal year after the 6% taken into account. Perhaps skip ahead a couple of years to fiscal year 28-29. That would adjust to about $69.80 in FY 28-29, and then would be at about $74 in fiscal year 30-31. So I think it is obviously a change, but hopefully a fairly manageable change that's gradual and steady year over year. The second, the following page 7 of 19, this begins to break out the operating expenses of the water fund. Again, I've assumed, if you want to add anything on, I've assumed 3.5% here for the operating expenses across the board, and certainly can adjust that as you see fit.
Yeah, with expenses, I just say about what AJ said, it's just wild how much stuff's going up every year, and with the electricity in the new plant, it does take more electricity to run, a little bit more expensive chemical. And just, I mean, like I said, everything costs more and it's gonna keep going up, so. That's all I got, really.
Oh, fair enough. Thank you.
Just tracking with the, perhaps skipping ahead to page 8 of 19. You can see the operating income row, row 108, just taking gross revenues less operating expenses. The water fund with the kind of the more material rate adjustments that have been put in place. Row 108 operating income shows a more stable and even slightly growing history of that operating income number. That is shown then to project going forward to steadily grow over time, not significantly jump, but again, just kind of take a steady growth going forward. The following page, page 9 of 19, this lays out the water revenue, debt service, revenues available for debt, and then row 130 is instructive to look at. The debt service on the 2021 water revenue debt, that's shown in row 119. That was planned and scheduled to gradually increase. It was, if you look at the first column, fiscal year 21-22, that debt service was about 197,000. Immediately to the right in row 119, 386,000, 431,000, 440,000, then it levels out at the $459,000 range going forward. That has you can see the impact as expenses have outpaced kind of the expected operating expense amount. That debt service coverage ratio on row 130 has dropped a bit. It's one in the current year is projected to be, and again, I think you have probably conservative operating expenses in here, which we'll tweak after the fiscal year completes. That's about 1.22 times in row 130 for the current fiscal year. Excuse me. And that is expected to recover a bit going forward, assuming these rate adjustments. What's assumed then for capital outlays and kind of one-time type projects are in rows 133, row 133. And then the fund balances for water, I was able to get that included here, though that's noted in the blue shaded area. Any questions on water at this point? Okay, I'll keep going to scenario B. If you don't mind going to page 11 of 19. This effect reflects kind of a middle of the road type approach to user rates, and the rate adjustments year over year percentage change are noted in rows 6 and 7 for the base and the per thousand gallon charge, assumed to be 4.75% for the current year, next year, and then again in 2027, 3.5% in 2028, and 3% going forward per year per annum in 2029 and forward. You'll note, let's see, the operating income in row on page 13 of 19 and row 108. In this scenario, looking at fiscal year 26-27 is about 628,000 with scenario B. That compares for that same fiscal year in scenario A, which is about 651,000. So slightly lower operating income margin comparing scenario A to B. Close, but just slightly smaller in B. And then so when you have a lesser rate adjustment per each water rate, the available amount for capital outlays in row 133 is less with scenario B, just because there's not as much money to fund those capital outlays. That's noted again in row 133. And fund balances are then in the blue shaded area at the bottom of page 14 of 19. And you can see the debt service coverage ratios in row 130 are reflected to be pretty strong going forward, above 1.5 times and greater going forward. So if the city wished to, you could call in some of the 2021 water revenue debt. It just is, it's at a favorable low rate. It's just a question of if that's a priority for the city, or looking at perhaps more cash funding of capital outlays or capital improvements. If you're ready, I'll go ahead and jump into scenario C then, if that's all right. Page 16 of 19. This reflects the smallest or most modest rate adjustment of any of the three scenarios. Again, in rows 6 and 7, assumes a 3.75% rate adjustment. I just applied this over a level 4-year period out through July 1 of 2028, 3.25 in July 1 of 2029, and that just tracking that same net operating income on page 18 of 19 in row 108. That was more in the 625 to 30,000, or excuse me, $650,000 range. This scenario in fiscal year 26-27, this reflects it at 598,000 with the more modest rate adjustments. The debt service coverage ratios are still good with this one, and on page 19 of 19 in row 130, just not quite as much cash available to fund cash funded capital outlays with this more modest or smaller rate adjustment approach. So glad to answer any questions that you might have, or make tweaks as you might like to see on any of the scenarios.
Do we know, and maybe this would be a question for AJ as well, but what the average water use is? You referenced 5,000 gallons. Is that about the average user in Huxley?
Yes, have a sense. As a whole, through the industry, is 100 gallons per day per person. So you figure that on 30 days of use, 5,000 probably a little high, but
Okay.
you know, that's just kind of what the industry standard is, about 100 gallons per day per person.
Okay. I just have my water bill to reference. That's where I was like, I don't know what normal is. So, okay, thanks.
Okay, good question. Any other questions or comments for Chip this evening? Okay, the council, certainly, well, I guess there's one option is to not do anything. That's always an option, but Northland's put together a nice, some nice options for us here. We can certainly take these home, digest them, digest the information, and then come back at a work session in a couple weeks or 4 weeks and kind of pick a path. I suppose if you were ready, we could pick a path now and have an ordinance in a couple weeks. So what's your pleasure here, council?
I would like to put it on next council meeting's work session.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think a work session's probably warranted.
Alrighty, David, you got that? Thank you again, Chip, for your information and presentation.
You bet. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, moving along. Any reports from departments this evening? Seeing no one rise. Forrest?
I just want to give council an update on the splash pad. It's out there this evening before the council meeting, and the parking lot is poured. The splash pad, half of it is poured. The rest of it is planned to be poured by the end of this week. The control building has been set. It's a big blue box out there. That's the runs the whole spray features. That's what's inside that in that box. And so again, like I said, they're on schedule to be completed ahead of schedule. So things are progressing.
Forrest, as I ran by that, maybe it's been a week ago now, there's the control building, the blue building, but then out front on Main Street's the water service. Is that
Yes.
home of the water service? Is that where it's gonna sit?
That's where it's going to be. It's going to be inside an enclosure
Okay.
though. So it'll be it'll be in a box. It's
Gotcha.
not there yet.
Perfect. It'll look better than it does.
Yes,
So,
so it'll look better.
Thank
Right now, there's just a plywood box.
Yeah.
So no, it'll be better than that.
Perfect. Thanks, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron, anything this evening? Thank you, ma'am. Barb? David?
Would just note, I'm gonna make a quick trip to Kansas City Thursday afternoon to see my grandson play ball Thursday night. Season's coming to an end. I gotta get to a game. So if you need me on Thursday afternoon, you know the number to call and I'll answer your call. I'm going. Thanks.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, it's been brought to my attention by quite a few people in Huxley now with the opening of Dottie's, that we have no sidewalk going from the bike path to the restaurant. So people are having to walk through the grass to get there. So we might want to put that on a future discussion at options and what can be done in that area.
Mr. Rigler.
Yeah, they've come a couple times looking for resolution. I actually was, I guess, seeking clearance myself. I know that we had heard something back from Jensen. Or I thought we had heard something back from Jensen, but I would be open to a work session to discuss. Resolve, I guess I can't remember what we had it on the books, if it was just your guys' name or if we needed to invite, who's the neighbor right behind him as well.
Yeah.
But for the discussion, so.
Thank you, Stretcher. Okay, no, those are the comments that I was going to make, Mr. Rigler, so I appreciate that. That concludes our regular business for this evening. We do have a work session planned for this evening with 2 items. Item A this evening is the Quicks, Steve and Ann. Nope. Thank you, though.
I don't know if council knows the background here. We've been in contact with both Dave and Dave. They would like us to bring our remaining ground that we have that's part of the county, voluntarily annex that into the city. The issue that we have is that we were denied a development agreement that was promised to us on a number of occasions by council. A number of you here were involved with that. That was denied, and that has not set well with us. It's difficult to think that you're a partnership working together for the good of the city of Huxley. And we made decisions based on that development agreement. Those lots were sold at a lesser rate. You can go back and look at all the information at the county and see that our lots were sold much cheaper than anything that was sold in the county or sold in the city at the time. And then when that's pulled out from underneath you, that's a very difficult thing. I noticed in the information that was given to you, the most pertinent part of that is resolution 20-107, which is the approval of the development agreement with Meadow Lane. That was done in November of 2020. Unfortunately, the city administrator at the time had a very difficult time of getting anything done and could not get the development agreement paperwork to the council in a timely manner. And when the council changed, the opinion of the council changed, and that's when it was denied. And we're back to you now, requesting that development agreement. And we'd like to get back to the point where we're partners in development in Huxley. And that's why we're here. And open to any questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your comments, Steve. Certainly, I'm pretty well versed in the history here. And as you indicated, David and I have met with you and Ann. Any questions or comments from council? Some of you may not be quite as aware of the history of this, but be happy to fill in any gaps or answer any questions as well. So.
Can I say something?
Sure.
We had been working with Rita and she kept saying, I'm doing the paperwork. I'm working on it. I'll be with you. And we were very patient. And she kept saying, yes, yes, it was approved. I'm working on the paperwork. It will happen. And somehow it didn't. And then she left.
The other thing is that Dixon Jensen and I were in this council meeting, and there's a number of you here that were there at the time. We were in the exact same council meeting. We brought our projects forward to the council at the exact same time. The TIF agreements were requested at the exact same time. Dixon Jensen got a $16 million TIF. I didn't get my $560,000 TIF. So I don't understand what, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, I just don't know.
It was approved. It was in the works. It never happened.
You have the
But his did.
paper. They've got the paperwork. It was drawn up. So. But please feel free, ask any questions.
So ultimately here, the ask from the Quicks is to effectively execute that development agreement that was proposed years ago. Is there a general appetite to navigate that path? I guess David can answer some of these questions better, and as can Aaron. There legally may be a path to get us there, which is probably your first question. Maybe I'll start with that, and if David and or Aaron could address that piece.
Yes, the first piece that I looked at is I wanted to visit with Rhonda Sykes, the deputy auditor at Story County. Usually when an urban renewal area is put in, they set a base. So the increment can be used to pay your development agreements back. And I wanted to make sure that there was a base set. I did visit with Rhonda Sykes. There is a base that was set when they originally brought that property in. So that was kind of the first hurdle. The second hurdle is I contacted our bond counsel, Amy Bjork, explained to her kind of what I was looking at. And I said, for the most part, I think every single house has been built in this. If council had an appetite to move forward, could they move forward and having an updated agreement with the dollar amount that had been promised, put forward. And she said that they could certainly do that. So legally, it can be done. And there was a base established that does allow for the increment that has been generated since those homes have been built that could be used to pay this agreement.
And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been a lot of things that need to be done with the TIF that was done. So really the only thing that needed to be done by council was to sign the agreement.
I think the agreement just needed to be brought to council for approval for a final vote. I mean, there was an agreement that Amy Bjork had put together. It's in the file. I'm assuming it was an agreement that council saw back when it was originally done, but it just never got moved.
So we went through all the steps. All those steps were approved by council. Council approved the city administrator having that document made up. So the intent of all the councils up to the last one was that was an intention of the council.
David, in recent history, the development agreements have been redrafted, reallocated, maybe I should say, reallocated regarding the city's portion. What did this development agreement look like? Do you recall off the top of your head?
If I remember off the top of my head, there was a portion that was going to LMI and the remainder was going to the Quicks. And I do believe that I think if there were a new agreement were to come, the LMI amount, I think is decreased a little bit compared to what it was when that one was originally written, if I'm not mistaken.
And I put in a request for a variance from the state, which I was approved for, and I believe it included Plat 4. We'd have to check on that. It's been long, it's been too many years.
Is Plat 4 the 30 acres that or that's just the piece that the homes were built?
We got the agreement on knowing we were going to do Plat 4. So we got that variance to include Plat 4 also.
Yeah, well, when I visited with Rhonda, I believe all of your property that's currently in the city limits is in a URA and has a base set.
Okay.
So that would cover, I think, Plats 4 through, I think, 8 or 9. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing is, originally the council approved 100% development agreement. Greg was one of my declining people. And that development was decreased to 50%. So originally that development was $1 million and it was decreased to 560. So that's the paperwork that you have, is the decreased amount.
So your actual cost for roads, infrastructure, et cetera, was the $1 million range.
Mhm.
The reimbursable amount based on the 50% is 560-ish, so.
So I could probably speak to, I was one of the three that voted against it. And when I ran originally, I ran on the basis that I didn't believe we should be tiffing residential properties and so forth. Second of all, when you talk about the million, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did come in like one of the meetings before we voted on the 560,000. And you asked the council, basically, I mean, not basically, quote unquote, you said, I'm gonna be greedy. I want the 1.2 million for this. Prior to actually us voting on the 560,000.
What isn't greedy?
I think that was his words back then.
I don't remember that. I would surely like to hear an audio of that.
So,
but
I mean,
I have to, through your requirements, give you a breakdown of my cost.
I'm not saying, I'm not disputing that, Steve, but what I'm saying is that's what happened to my recollection.
The other thing is, when you have something like that, even though you call it 100%, it's not, because within the 10-year limit of when it can happen, you never get reimbursed.
Yeah.
You never get the whole thing.
So to this date, you've received approximately $1.5 million in TIF, is that correct?
I couldn't tell you.
So,
On previous,
sure.
Dave can.
previous
Yeah,
plats.
previous plats, yes, correct.
Goes to previous expenses.
So I'm in favor, we have talked recently about adding sub-base and so forth. At that point, I would be in favor of future TIF agreements for the residential properties, but I'm still no on that. And I, you
And
know,
that's
I know
your
we're gonna
prerogative.
agree to disagree, but I
Yeah.
mean, that's just what I'm saying is like, my opinion on this, it's already been voted on. It was tabled. I think it's a done situation. I don't, please let me finish. I don't like the situation where this is being held over our head for an annexation. And I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's right. And my vote is still no.
Why then do you think we should voluntarily annex that property?
Why is it so
Or
important to
future
you?
growth in the community. I agree,
Without kids.
Steve and Ann, I agree. You've done a lot for the community. The community has done a lot for you though also. So I think it's been a good working relationship, and it could continue to be a good working relationship. Now annexing the future building of the city, you do hold a big step in that. And I think you agreed on it originally when you talked to Dave, and then you talked to Ann, and then things changed, which I fully believe.
You're
that-
married, right?
Yeah, I believe, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I fully believe that you should be talking to your wife and spouse and.
Well, she's
But I
50% owner.
I also think that as a council, you should respect the votes and the decisions that were made
A
by the
previous council.
previous to you, who agreed, who signed, who voted. We have
There was nothing
documentary-
signed.
I mean, you have things written in the minutes of your meetings that it was all approved and it was all done.
Okay, that's just my
So
opinion.
why would
And
you
that's
not?
fine.
I mean, give me a reason why you would not vote for that now, when it was already, I mean, you're saying it's a
Because
done
we
deal.
voted as a council at that time to not do it.
I don't think you had all the information at the time when you voted.
Yes, we did. But anyway, that's just my vote, and that's my take on it.
And I knew that would be your vote.
Yep, that's fair enough.
Mhm.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
So-
Mr. Rigler?
Yeah,
I didn't appreciate that it was being held over our heads either.
Fair. Mr. Rigler.
Thank you.
Oh, please. I just want to make sure you can hear any other councilman's comments. So
Okay.
you've heard one, but I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to hear from everybody
Yeah.
if you wish. So
I want to answer all questions and all concerns.
yeah, Dave, when you brought it to us last time, I don't want to use the word conditional incorrectly, but I think it was proposed as maybe an incentive to reconsider this as part of the annexation. Am I characterizing that correctly before I move forward with that?
I would say, I think when we originally looked at it, we were looking at, I think because of probably what had happened in the past, I was trying to propose something that I thought might be beneficial to both sides. Would be that, that it would be conditioned upon the annexation, but then I know Tracy just didn't want to tie that up. I don't think Greg wanted to tie it that way either. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I recall from that meeting. So it was decided that we would invite the Quicks to come to the next meeting and talk about the agreement.
Okay, great. No, that's more or less how I had remembered it. Yeah, you guys gave us a great timeline, which was helpful for me. And then I had heard just historically kind of the back and forth on this. I obviously wasn't sitting on council at the time. Considering what we had done for Chris as well, when there was poor documentation or transfer of documentation, I would definitely be open to reconsidering it. I could be greatly beneficial to the city to be able to annex that piece. And Dave, I recognize you don't have a vote now, but you, Greg, and Tracy, two of which are on the current council, had voted to approve it at one point in time. So I think there was probably merit to it, and it went to the county. So I would be open to the discussion, knowing all of that.
okay, appreciate those comments. Mr. Mulder.
Yeah, thanks for remembering. I was one that went from 100 to 50, and I think that was the kind of the scope of the entire council then. And I thought we had approved it to move forward at that time with that smaller amount. So I fully expected it to move forward at that time, and then I wasn't a part of the council that voted against it. So I don't have all that piece of a history. So I guess I'm still wondering, probably like you guys, why it didn't necessarily move forward after that time period in 2020. So yeah, I still have my own questions on. I do know that they took a vote with the next council. So my word's my word, and I felt like in 2020 we had an agreement. It wasn't what you wanted then, but it was something we could.
And it
we could agree.
wasn't, but I agreed that.
But we agreed.
Because I saw their handwriting on the wall.
Right, but we agreed to agree. So that's kind of where I stand as I was forward then. I know other councils voted against it. I don't know what the right steps are there, but
and that's why we're here, just to ask if it's at all possible.
Yeah,
yeah, fair enough. Mr. Murphy.
Like Mr. Rigler, I wasn't here for the history of it all. I can tell you that the history I've seen of what's gone on in Huxley's been a little bit appalling to me. Only in the nature that we supposedly got agreements that aren't in writing, or agreements, ghost agreements. We've got all sorts of things out there. I really some days wonder what's there, what's not. And really what the methodology was of how we awarded things to people. With the history that I see, I see history that it looks like there was intent to approve and then the council approved. I really don't know what to say about it, other than the fact that councils change, and that's a ramification of councils changing, is that sometimes the votes go opposite of where you're looking where it's going. With that being said, I'm not opposed to looking or talking more about the issue here. I think with the data, it sort of supports what everybody else has said. Data shows that there was intent. I just don't really know the full story behind it.
my personal history here, I don't recall if there was actually a vote at council. That would have been 5, 6 years ago. I'm pretty confident had there been, I would have been in support of it. I would have supported that development agreement. I've supported residential development agreements throughout, so I'm fairly confident of that. It's pretty clear that once there was a council changeover, it was not going to happen with that council. So if it had come to a vote with that council, it wasn't gonna go anywhere.
And I had the conversation with Rita that we needed to get that development agreement done and signed before the new council took effect.
She kept
I
reminding us.
have the paperwork. I have all of her communications to council that she recommended that this be done. And she couldn't make it happen. I have a lot more paperwork that they've never supplied you with, and I would be more than happy to get that to him for historical benefit if you like. But we don't need to if you don't want to see it. But Dave, you've always been a positive vote on development agreements. So I will tell you that yes, you always did vote yes. And so.
I appreciate that, Steve. It seems like there is some support here, David, to bring this back. Are there any terms or conditions, so to speak, that need to be not reconsidered and that we're changing the agreement, but that require some type of modification or not?
I think the agreement will be updated to bring it into this time period. I mean, we would stick with the 560, which was what kind of that intent was. I mean, I think that LMI will drop just a little bit, not a lot, but because it is residential, we're still required to set aside for the LMI. It's just a matter of getting with Amy Bjork, how quickly she can update the agreement and get it back to us.
It'll still need to go through the school board for their sign off and the county for their sign off.
No, because they're already no, that would be if we're creating a new URA. And we're not, that URA has already been created. So I don't believe we have to take anything back to the school.
Okay, perfect. I cut somebody off. So,
I was just gonna say, I don't want this to be contingent on the annexation and growth and whatever. For me, this is just brought forward again from a historical thing that didn't happen, right? I don't want this to feel like you're leveraging this to do the other. This, to me, it's coincidental that it came up at this time. Is that a fair statement, Dave?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. With that, David, it seems to be some general support. If you could bring this back as a council item here in the near future, certainly make the Quicks aware of when that'll be. It might take you some time to get through legal counsel, et cetera, to get it redrafted. So
I will give Miss Bjork a call tomorrow and see how quickly we can get something turned around.
So I got one question.
Yes,
So
sir.
if we would do the annexation first and then this vote? Okay, thank you.
No, thanks you.
And I've told this to both Daves. There's a trust factor that was lost between me and the city council. So
Again, we got a new city council, correct?
we do.
Okay.
Perfect. And Steve, I really do appreciate your comments this evening. And we'll see you here in a future council meeting.
Appreciate it.
We
Thank you.
appreciate that you
Thanks.
listened.
Thanks. for
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you.
David, if you need anything, give me a call. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is next item on the work session, I should say, is regarding the parking regulations. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this item? At the previous meeting, I gave the public an opportunity prior to the work session item to speak on this. So
Do you want Aaron maybe to talk about kind of the proposed changes that they have in this to where I think we tried to lay it out that they prepared an ordinance that will have some different changes and it's kind of council can kind of pick and choose what they like or don't like. You don't have to adopt any of it. You can adopt half of it, all of it. It's kind of up to you, but I think we may have some comments from staff as well.
No,
So
that sounds great. Yeah.
Aaron, if you would
give
just
us-
give them kind of a brief overview and stuff.
Yeah, no problem. We're on TV. All right, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, so what you guys have in the packet is, my colleague Dallas was here with you guys at the last meeting. And so from his feedback, we've put together some options for you guys to consider. So we heard some of the concerns. We heard concerns about the continuous parking. We heard concerns about trailers that were being parked and then trailers that were not attached. So we heard that there were some safety considerations that you were thinking about. In terms of if they were attached to a motorized vehicle, the trailers, they could easily be moved if there was a fire truck incident that needed to come through or something like that. So what we have here are options. You'll see 1 through 4 under 6909. I don't envision that you're going to adopt all of this language because I think some of it's inconsistent. But what we tried to give you is something to talk about if you're more concerned about the continuous parking, if you're more concerned about whether they're attached, the trailers are attached to a motorized vehicle, and so forth. And so these are here, they're taken from, language is taken from different community ordinances. And with your feedback, we'll amend it and tailor it so that it fits what you're most concerned about addressing. Questions on any of that?
Do you want to just run through kind of what you guys had proposed for the 4
Oh, sure,
topics?
absolutely.
Just so the audience can kind of hear it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so for one, is the unattached trailers. And so with that, it says that trailers that are not attached to an operable motorized vehicle capable of moving the trailer on a public roadway, so those would not be allowed, right? The thought there was if there was a safety concern that it wouldn't be easy to hook those trailers up to a motorized vehicle to get them out of the way if there was a safety incident. 2 talks about attached trailers. So no person shall park any trailer, semi-trailer, or other non-motorized vehicle of any type or size on a public roadway in a residential district, except as herein provided. Those vehicles can park for a purpose of loading or unloading or making local deliveries, but shall not exceed 48 hours. So that's kind of a hybrid of, those that are attached, they can be there for a certain amount of time, but they can't live there indefinitely. 3 talks about trucks. So motor vehicles of any type that exceed 7 feet in height or 8 feet in width or 20 feet in length. Again, those could be tailored and adjusted. We're just taking some language that we've seen in other ordinances. In length shall not be parked on any street in a residential district except as herein provided. Such vehicles may park for the purpose of loading or unloading or making local deliveries, but in no event shall said activity exist for more than 48 hours. So this is talking about your delivery trucks, your moving trucks, your larger size vehicles. How long can they live there, knowing that that's probably going to occur in a community, right? So you're probably going to have some allowance for that. And then 4 is just a general in excess of 48 hours. This mirrors, the first sentence mirrors what you currently have in your ordinance language, that the vehicle can't remain for more than 48 hours. What we've added here is some objective criteria of how to determine whether or not the vehicle has moved or not. So what we have now proposed here is that they have to move at least 20 feet in order to be considered to have moved. Because otherwise we've got people moving inches and it's tough to gauge whether or not they've actually moved. So.
And if I'm not mistaken, that language came from Iowa City?
That language 4 came from Iowa City.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Before I open it up for any public comments, is there any clarifications that you might need from Aaron?
Okay.
You must have done a terrific job, Aaron, so I appreciate it.
Look forward to feedback and we'll take a look.
Thank you. As I indicated, I'll give the public an opportunity to speak. This was available in the packet. So you can see what council is considering there on the screen. Is there anybody from the public wishing to make any comments on this topic this evening? If so, I'd just ask that you come to the podium to make those. Please, sir. And ask that you start with your name and address.
Gentleman, 519 East Third Street. Just if you are considering any unattached trailer, think about construction sites. I mean, that's just one industry. Just think of anyone that works at a job site for more than a day. Sometimes it's just feasible to leave the trailer there, you know, so just think of that if you're considering number one. That's really all I have to say, but active construction sites.
So unattached on a job site, so it's not parked in the lawn, it's parked in the
Just on-
street, it's the
yeah.
rebar trailer, it's the forms truck, something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
just something, because I just have an enclosed trailer, all my tools in it, that sometimes it just makes sense to leave it there. Gotta run to the lumberyard.
Okay,
Stuff
okay,
like
that's
that,
your
you know.
scenario. Okay, that makes sense.
Just,
Okay,
and there's other contractors, other people with different industries that
For sure.
probably do similar things. So if you're thinking about the unattached trailer, keep that in mind. And I live in Huxley, so I have to occasionally bring my trailer home to fix my house. So I unhook it to go to the lumberyard or wherever I gotta go. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking of number
Yep.
one, if you go that route.
Okay, I appreciate your comments this evening. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak on this item? Okay, seeing no one rise, I'll turn it over to council here for some conversation.
I'll start off with it. I'm not a big fan of number 3 with the trucks. I'll just start off there. That one, to me, yes, you can change height, width, length, the whole works, but I'm not sure that trucks is really the issue, the crux of the issue that we're getting at. I'm not really sure the crux of the issue we're getting at, other than I think it's more of a personal spat than anything that's drawn this direction, but it's fine. It could be cleaned up. I do like number 2 with the attached trailers. I think everybody should have a right to be able to bring a trailer into their property and load. If you're coming overnight and leaving the next morning, like we've heard some people say, perfectly happy with that. Most people that do that already are pretty considerate and put it in places that are not being a bother to people to begin with. So I'm okay with 2, I'm okay with 4. I think 4 might be a little bit hard. I don't know who's gonna be the vehicle police that are out there checking it 20 foot each time, but I mean, I'll leave that up to law enforcement, what they think there. As far as 1, I would agree that if he's gonna do something with unattached trailers, I think we have to take into consideration construction. I would agree with that, so that's my input.
So your thoughts on number 1 as written, or do you have a potential change to that, Mr. Murphy?
Well, I would think with number 1, we'd have to look at the aspect of contractors. I mean, a lot of contractors will pull into a lot if it's feasible, but not always is it feasible. The other concern though that I have with that with contractors is I've seen some pretty shady trailers out there with no lights, no reflectors, no anything. And in the dark and some of these narrow roads become a real safety concern. So, I mean, I understand everybody's point there. It's just maybe if we had trailers there that they had to have reflectors behind it, reflector triangles or something like that required to be behind it or something in that nature to highlight that it's there.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Mulder.
I agree with John on a lot of this stuff.
Scary.
Write that down, John.
I'm gonna make note of that, Greg.
I've been the guy who's been a concrete laborer and left a trailer in front of a job site and it needed to be, and sometimes we'd park a skid loader in front of it or something. Identify, show that it was there. So, if it just says unattached trailers, we have to run to go things, to be efficient, to go pick up stuff, go to lunch or do things, and it not always conducive to pull a big trailer through those. So yeah, I agree that construction activities and things like that need to be considered with that. So I don't know how we put that in that verbiage necessarily.
So if it was if it was allowed during daylight hours or, dusk, dawn to dusk kind of hours, would that address maybe both of your concerns? So you just no overnight or maybe not?
Yeah, I think it should be identified somehow. I was actually thinking about some of these Mid-American Energy and some others that always have to put a cone out in front of their vehicles or back into a stop and good safety things. I have seen other construction equipment out parked on the roadways without any reflectives and stuff like that. And that makes it really hard to see at night. So that's a concern. So I don't know how we have to identify it there. I'm kind of okay with it at night, but for me, it's addressing a safety factor. It's also addressing, are you blocking your neighbors or, can be in the consideration of your neighbors. If you can't have 5 people stop by and normally park in front of your house and they have to park a block away because there's consistently vehicles parked in front of your house that aren't yours or somebody else's, then that's a concern, the consideration of your neighbors. But if you have to park in front of your own house and leave it there, I mean, and nobody, you're not bothering anyone else, I'm kind of okay with that. So I think about the lawn people and everybody else who bring in trailers and go do what they need to do and then leave, stay attached. I'm okay with that for, for that period of making deliveries or doing work activity there. I noticed the length of the trucks. I know my uncle won't be able to visit and park in the street because his truck's a F-450 long box and it's 22.5 feet long. So I know we were trying to get away from the weights and everything else along with that and trying to identify the type of truck. So I understand where we're going with that for sure. And the 48 hours, I like that. It makes you have to move those vehicles. I don't want them out in the street for, weeks at a time. So I think for the most part, John and I.
We can agree on something.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Mr. Rigler, I'll move to you.
Yeah, some of the same sentiments on the unattached trailers. If there's a way to denote active work sites, whether it's signage, cones, reflectives, that to me would make sense as well. I didn't come from concrete, but tree care and landscaping and farming. So, two, I think I'd love to hear Nate's take or, someone on the city's take. I think at one point we had asked for kind of, how have we been enforcing this? And I think off of memory too might be kind of the closest to how we have been doing it, which is as long as it's attached and people are moving it. As far as the exact length of time, I can't remember what the city's been doing up until this point. Three, I'm gonna triple down on not liking that. I think actually Z71s, like just a standard pickup might exceed 7 foot. And I think that because I had to remove my antenna, to be able to back into my garage. So, not that height itself's inherently bad, but I think you're gonna catch a lot of just your standard F-150s, Silverados that might be pushing that limit if they have the off-road package, as they'll call it, but the 2-inch lift that they offer, rolling off the lot. So, I guess 3 to me because of the prohibitive language, I don't like that one really. And then if the city's gonna weigh in or if Nate can offer some perspective on how close 2 is to what we're doing. The distance in which we move it or whether they're chalk and tires or curbs or whatever, I don't know how easy that is to enforce. So I don't want it to be burdensome or time consuming. I think it's almost a gut check thing. Greg mentioned being neighborly. It's almost, it's a problem when it's a problem sort of deal. I realize that's hard to enforce in itself. But I don't know what measuring or marking looks like. So 2 reads pretty simple to me, and I think that probably captures the majority of the problems, but I definitely love to hear feedback as well.
Okay, great. Mr. Etcher.
So I agree with you guys on the point that size, height, width, length, that's just asking too much for our enforcement to be tracking down. In reference to the unattached, so we wouldn't be able to say if the wheels were chalked, whether that trailer was safe or anything. So I would say we need to keep the unattached trailer as written. The trailer and the truck, when we're looking at, I worked small town, I worked Huxley, I worked Ames. I was in law enforcement for 36 years. So when you're talking about marking, it's not that big of a deal. What our city attorney had talked, Aaron, it could be moved 2 inches and that would change the 48 hours. So I'm all in favor of the 20 feet because it's a lot easier to determine whether that vehicle's been moved 2 inches or 20 feet. So I do believe we still need to keep the ordinance in reference to the attached trailers also, because not every contractor, not every person that has a trailer is gonna be cordial to their neighbors. And that's why we do have ordinances in those cases. And in reference to like the RVs and so forth, 48 hours, I'm for that. The trailers, I'm leaning more toward a 24 hours than the 20 foot, but I mean, I'm completely good with whatever you guys decide. But I will add this, that whatever we decide, we do need to, if we get a complaint, we need to enforce our codes. Thank you.
I appreciate those comments. Nate, is there anything you wish to add? Just want to make sure I don't skip over you. You've had the benefit of hearing some feedback here, so.
Sure, yeah. I'll say that if we, sounds like there's a little bit of talk, maybe abandoning number 3, which opens up things to like semis. All right, so that's something to consider in Winnebago's, and that's that. My only wish here is, like I said before, clear and fair, and we'll enforce it as written. That's it. So once you guys give us a go ahead and you put something down on paper, we will do it. That's it. And complaint based or not, we'll do the complaint, but we'll also, if we self-discover, we'll enforce that as well.
So in reference to the semis, Nate, we could probably put something in the ordinance of anything over like 30,000. That's what your your straight trucks and so forth are
Right.
over 30,000.
Sure.
So, and by running the license plate, you're gonna know whether that vehicle's over the 30,000. So, I mean, Aaron, you could probably look up what other communities has on that but I agree with you. We do not want it where we're gonna open it up to where semis can park on city streets.
Yeah, we actually had pulled some language like that, so we can include that so that you've got your very large vehicles that can cause damage, frankly, to the concrete you have out there. So your semis, your RVs. We don't have anything on here on boats too. And so I did want to bring that up because I know in some communities that's an issue. I have not heard that here, but boats on the streets, do we want language to prohibit those in any capacity or no?
Would that be under the trailer? Because it's trailered?
A lot of times it is, but it's not necessarily, I mean, I suppose if it's on the trailer, we would capture it there, but.
Yeah, I guess my recommendation here would be number 2 to somehow include trailers, boats, semi-trailers, etc. So.
Okay.
On the tractor trailer, we're seeking to prohibit even just the tractor itself, right? Not a whole semi, but just the cab part. I think you call that a tractor, right? So your weight limits that he's proposing, that captures just the tractor part, I assume?
I think if we even use the language semi-tractor trailer, it's fairly easily identifiable.
Okay.
I think we can get by with that too.
What about a straight dump truck?
Up to you guys.
I mean.
Yeah,
that's basically your weight is the same as a tractor on a semi, as a straight truck. It's not an easy predicament, is it?
Well, in your established neighborhood, I don't think it's desirable to have a dump truck on a adjacent to a construction project. that might seem more reasonable.
So if we have an active work site, I could see having the dump truck there and, you know, park for, but okay, so I'm a contractor and I want to bring my dump truck home and park it out in front of my residence.
I'm not in favor of that concept.
That's what I'm saying. We need to have something in there.
There's a weight limit sign on Centennial Drive at a soccer field, what's that say? There was a weight limit, I just drove by it the other day. What's probably around 5,000. Yeah, whatever the weight limit should be, whatever you drive on the bed. There's a weight limit sign.
So number one, there was some concern or not a lot of excitement for number one. Is there a way to tweak that? Do we just scratch it all together, or do we add in a provision of safety barriers or some type of traffic warning device? I guess those kind of seem to be the options: eliminated or warning devices.
Kind of in favor of warning devices or something to make it so they're safe. You can be seen if it's left overnight. I don't know if I necessarily want it left over a weekend or anything like that, you know, so the 48 hours would take care of that.
We could certainly do that. I think that we would either need to adjust the definition of vehicle in number 4 so that it would cover your unattached trailers, or add the 48-hour language to the unattached trailer section.
Right.
But we can certainly add some language about safety devices. I heard a couple of you talking about, you know, if it's in an active construction site,
Right.
that's okay. Do you still want the 48-hour limit, or do we not care about the limit when we're in an active construction site?
48.
Okay.
Seems
I think a 48 would be.
Okay.
For most people, I think that covers it.
In regards to the safety device, I think that's a reasonable compromise. Maybe Forrest, if I could look to you, I know Greg's got expertise as well, but my expectation is not a 12-inch safety plan. So is there a standard they can reference that must be this? You know, I don't want to leave that too vague.
Yeah, it has to be reflective, right? You need something reflective out there at night.
So if we do something like that, then you're gonna have to specify how far back it is and where it's located. And you're asking too much of the officers to.
I'm not asking for it to be
Yeah,
within 3 feet of the trailer or 6 feet away. Or I mean, I think if you identify and your headlights see it and reflective, you'll notice it's there, even if it's right up against the trailer.
I think you could, look at the industry standard of like your utility company, your utility companies, because even like your cable installers, if they're parked, they have to put a cone out. They all seem to have almost the same certain size of a cone that's there, and it just has to be there to notify. I don't know that there's.
Yeah,
language.
MUTCD explains a lot of that stuff on the right stuff and your work zones and with traffic control you have to have up for each one of those. Specifically, on the highways, if you're using a daytime road closure, you can use a cone. But if you have to have overnight, you have to use a reflective cone, and there's specified sizes and stuff. 42-inch channelizers for certain speeds and other things like that. So I don't think we need to go specifically a 42-inch channelizer, because they're going to be all low speed residentials most likely. So
Yeah, I'm just thinking more of the size of cone. If the city wanted to dictate the size of cone and that it's reflective, basically.
Do we know how any other communities that are allowing unattached trailers to park? I mean, that would probably be the first step. If we knew any other communities that are allowing that, then they would probably have some kind of an ordinance that we could look at. I don't know. I know Ames doesn't. I know Ankeny doesn't. I don't know what Cambridge, I don't know what Slater has. I don't know what Story City has. I mean.
My travels around Iowa and small towns. I run into trailers all the time, and they're not reflective sitting alongside the road. And I can tell you at nighttime, as I get older, it's harder to see, and they're a danger.
Your metro communities are not gonna allow unattached trailers. I can tell you that with confidence. You know, the more rural you get, it probably is allowed. They might not even have anything on the books to address it.
Again, I just don't, unattached trailer, it's just not a safe situation. You can't control a lot of variables that are with that, whether we're gonna put out cones, whether we're gonna put reflectors on the back or whatever. We just can't control the uncontrolled variables like you and I, when we get old, or we are older, we can't see as good. So but that's up to you guys.
Well, if you use the mayor's thoughts of, that they're not allowed overnight, that by dusk, that, they have to be moved or set some time period.
And I'm good with that, because it's like the contractors and so forth, if they're working during the day, if they gotta, drop and go somewhere, I'm hoping that they block them off and make sure that they're safe, but that's not always gonna happen. But I mean, I would be okay with that.
And in regard to the cones, that's just, I don't know if you guys forget, but there's a lot of little kids that like to pick up shiny things. And as a business owner, I don't want to have to buy 50 cones, put on my truck as they go to Superior. Also tractors, they have slow moving signs, the one implement sign. If you're gonna go that route, it'd be easier. I can screw that to my trailer. But then also, I'm a one-man band and I have multiple trailers. So some job sites, I have 2 trailers and I'm not gonna drive them freaking Nevada wherever I have to take them, but I can park them overnight. Just so I can abide by city council rules or whatever. It just seems a little unfair to people that make them move overnight unattached ones. It's like I said, I got multiple trailers. Sometimes I have 2 off the job site because they're different trailers for different.
Appreciate that comment. Do I have a final direction on what you folks want to do on? Is a safety device is all you're looking for, and then you're okay with overnight parking?
Safety nice, but I, to Rory's point, if it's during the day and leaving for a little bit, you run to the store or run it, grab lunch or whatever's needed. I can live with that. I think that carries a little burden to the contractors or people in those work zones. I think we just a little bit of forgiveness in those work zones. And if they are in those areas, if they have to leave it or unexpected things came up and they coned it off and it was safe for everyone to work in that area, I wouldn't really have a problem with it. I know that's hard to draw a black and white line, so I don't know how we say that in construction areas, so.
We can work through language,
Yeah.
right? And then it might need to be tweaked. If it's not working, we adjust ordinances all the time. Am I hearing that we want to allow dawn to dusk without safety? And if we're overnight, up to 48 hours, but would require safety? Am I hearing that as a consensus? I know we're a lot of different directions, but.
I've heard from. No.
Okay. Okay, all right, that's where we'll start. Again, we can adjust from there. Okay.
Is there language in some ordinance that prohibits the dumping of rock or dirt or sand or whatever in the roadway?
We have that.
That's a separate ordinance, so we don't need to address that here. Okay.
Yeah, we've already
Perfect.
written some tickets on that.
Yep, that's an issue at times, so.
Okay,
Okay, do you have enough direction then, Aaron, or is there anything else?
I think I've got it. I think I'm good.
I appreciate your assistance on
Right,
this. so.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion.
Motion, Mr. Mulder. Second, Mr. Rigler. All those in favor, please respond to the aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Next meeting is June 24th. Thank you very much.